This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast, and I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. It's Tuesday, January 17th. It was an unwelcome ruling for about 600,000 Celsius account holders who are probably wishing they'd read the fine print more closely before investing. Or, frankly, put more stock in the crypto mantra, not your keys, not your coins. So, what happened? Well, earlier this month, federal bankruptcy judge Martin Glenn found that when people deposited assets with the now bankrupt crypto lender Celsius, and in exchange received interest on those deposits, that those assets became the property of Celsius. The effect was to make the customers of that earn program, as it was called, defined as what's known in finance terms as unsecured creditors. What that means in practice is they're unlikely to get all their money back because of the ongoing bankruptcy. Many investors signed up for these accounts, in part because of the potentially high returns that Celsius had promised them on the deposits. In some cases, as much as 18%. Even with current levels of interest rates, that's way more than you'd make at a savings bank, for example. But unlike at a bank, those deposits, which were held in crypto, were not in any way covered by any sort of federal deposit insurance. And just to give a little bit of context about how many people are affected here, the value of those accounts back in July was more than $4 billion. But this ruling won't only affect Celsius customers. For more on what else you should expect, we've got Bloomberg reporter Jeremy Hill.
Prior to this ruling, thousands of Celsius users may have been clinging to the hope that one day the company would simply raise the gates on the website, as it were, and let them withdraw their crypto if it was there. We know that there's a big hole in the balance sheet. A lot of the crypto just isn't there anymore.
Jeremy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You, of course, are one of the folks who's been sort of dragged, potentially kicking, potentially screaming, into covering way more crypto than you might have expected going into 2022. But one of the things that has certainly taken up a lot of your time in reporting is the ins and outs of these various rulings affecting some of these crypto companies. Why are these different rulings important? Like, what's going on? Is it that there just weren't many bankruptcies before? Is it because judges are doing unexpected things? Like, what's the landscape here?
You're pretty much right there. I mean, crypto, as we know, it occupies a sort of strange place in the legal landscape. Is Bitcoin a security? Is Ethereum a security? If not, what does that mean for users of websites that get into trouble? These are questions that hadn't been answered. The SEC hasn't said much about this, the CFTC. So when crypto lenders started landing in bankruptcy last year, immediately lawyers around the country began scratching their heads, saying, uh-oh, what are judges going to say about this? We're now starting to get some of those rulings.
And those, as you have reported, very highly paid crypto bankruptcy lawyers, what are some of the most important cases that they've been involved in? What are some of the judges talking about? I know Celsius is a big one that happened recently.
This is Celsius. Depositors put money into Celsius, expecting that, well, the money was still theirs and they're just earning an interest on it. But now it seems as though potentially in this bankruptcy hearing, they could potentially not be theirs.
Celsius is certainly the biggest so far because FTX, for example, just hasn't had enough time to play out. Celsius and Voyager both went bankrupt at around the same time. Both were crypto lenders, so users deposited coins and then the companies lent them out to generate yield, much like traditional banks do. But as we now know, these were not regulated like banks. They didn't resemble banks in a lot of ways. And so most recently, we got a ruling out of the Celsius case regarding whether or not customer deposits that were put into interest-bearing accounts, whether those coins belong to Celsius or whether they belong to users. That's very important for recoveries.
So what the judge found, if I'm remembering this correctly, is if you, because you didn't as a person, but if you theoretically had deposited crypto in a particular kind of Celsius account, that crypto ceased to be your crypto, according to this judge.
That's absolutely right. So there was a lot of discussion about terms of service, a lot of exhibits submitted to the court showing what the contract between the users and Celsius looked like when someone signed up for these so-called earn accounts. What the judge found here was when you clicked the box that said, I accept, you were agreeing to some lines in that contract that said, by depositing coins with Celsius into this kind of account, I grant right and title to Celsius. So these coins are no longer mine. Legally speaking, they belong to Celsius. So after much thinking and review and arguing, the judge said, yeah, that's what the contract says. Like, I'm really sorry to tell you that this is not your Bitcoin anymore.
There is a saying, of course, in the crypto industry, not your keys, not your coins. If you're not in personal possession, then, buyer beware.
And so as a person, a theoretical Jeremy, who is now looking at this court ruling, like, what does this mean for you in practice? So you already are in an interesting spot because the entity with which you deposited your crypto filed for bankruptcy. Now you're hearing from this judge, not necessarily even your crypto or not actually your crypto at all. Does this mean this person has an even lower chance of getting any of their crypto back?
Pretty much. So prior to this ruling, thousands of Celsius users may have been clinging to the hope that one day the company would simply raise the gates on the website, as it were, and let them withdraw their crypto if it was there. We know that there's a big hole in the balance sheet. A lot of the crypto just isn't there anymore. Now, with this ruling, we know that all Celsius users that have interest-bearing accounts are going to be treated like unsecured creditors. So they're going to get, the term is pro rata. They're going to get their proportion of whatever pie is created as a result of this bankruptcy rather than just getting whatever coins they were owed. So in some sense, it's more equitable. Everybody's in the same bad spot. In another sense, you're probably kind of sad if you had some Dogecoin or whatever. I don't know if Celsius accepted Dogecoin. If you had some Dogecoin on the platform and you would like to just get it back, there might be enough for you to get it all back, but you're just not allowed now. It's not yours.
How do they rank unsecured creditors? So, like, where would a theoretical Jeremy be in the kind of, here's the pie, you're like 100th, 1,000th, 10,000th? Like, where are you?
So unsecured creditors generally aren't ranked. You're all in the same bucket, right? So it doesn't really matter what kind of coins you had or the size of your holdings, if you had good ones or bad ones. You're just going to get the same percentage slice of the assets that every other general unsecured creditor is. And that includes like vendors to Celsius. So not only users, but like the people who literally keep the lights on, utilities, what have you. You're all in the same boat.
And is it a percentage of the amount that was owed, or is it just a percentage of the amount that's left?
So they're going to decide at some point when to like calcify the amount of the claims. That might have already happened. I actually don't know off the top of my head. But that date will matter because you'll get a percentage of what you were owed as of X date.
Got it. So just because, so you were owed, say, $2,000, you might get back $1 or $100 maybe, depending on what the pool is.
Sure, yeah. We don't know the recovery levels quite yet. It could be a lot better than that. I mean, the likelihood that everybody's going to get all their stuff back is vanishingly small. Something amazing would have to happen.
Well, what is the benefit to Celsius of having these assets be classified this way?
This is pretty great for Celsius because among the assets deposited into earn accounts was like $23 million worth of stable coins. Those are pretty easily turned into dollars that the company can use to keep paying its bankruptcy lawyers and still live in bankruptcy. So they've been asking to sell these stable coins for a while because the company's running out of money. Sometime in the early spring, it's projected that they'll be out of cash, and finding financing from a third party for this company is like,
not very likely.
Yeah, I don't envy those bankers. So This is great for them in the sense that they can keep the lights on a little longer.
Got it. Up next, more from Bloomberg reporter Jeremy Hill on what the recent Celsius ruling could mean for crypto. We'll be right back. Now, one of the things that you've talked about in your previous appearances on the show is the fact that this isn't a thing that's going to get resolved tomorrow. What are some of the timelines that folks should be prepared to encounter?
Well, I don't have exact dates off the top of my head, but at some point, Celsius is going to file what's called a disclosure statement. And that disclosure statement is going to lay out the plan for getting Celsius out of bankruptcy and repaying creditors. The document is used to inform creditors, users about the shape of that plan, and everybody gets to vote. How much your vote matters depends on where the sort of value breaks in the company. But it's an important document, and that's like a key thing to look out for.
And have any of the other crypto companies that have entered into bankruptcy in the past year and a half filed similar documents already?
Voyager has, because they were going to sell themselves to FTX.
That they had a plan to get out of bankruptcy.
So they had their ducks in a row, and then something really bad happened. And now they're trying to sell themselves to Binance.us. That process is proceeding. They're facing some pushback, but if I recall correctly, that's been rolled into a plan, so a disclosure statement exists with estimated recoveries.
Voyager Digital has announced that crypto exchange operator Binance will acquire its assets. The deal worth just over $1 billion. Binance was one of several bidders for Voyager, which is currently in bankruptcy. Voyager said the move will start the process of allowing customer access to their funds.
And of course, the pushback comes from a combination of, there's a phrase that we've used here sometimes, which is like light regulatory objection, which is to say like the regulators haven't been like raw, but they've been like, we have concerns. And so the US SEC had some concerns about the Binance US proposal to acquire Voyager.
That's right. And other state securities regulators. And they have been, they vary in their forcefulness. And it seems like an overarching concern is like, we don't really know that much about Binance. As I understand it, Binance is sort of famously opaque in some ways. So these are objections that can very much be overcome. It's in no way like an all-out stop on the process. A judge will have to rule, or they might be settled before the sale hearing.
And just because we're talking about FTX in passing, a lot of attention has been obviously on kind of the criminal case against Sam Bankman-Fried. He has pleaded not guilty. Multiple of his former closest colleagues are appearing to be testifying against Bankman-Fried, possibly for, leniency applied to their own potential future prosecutions. But in terms of the FTX bankruptcy, where are they at in the process?
I think the biggest thing right now is the company's trying to get judges sign off on procedures for selling some assets. So we know that FTX does have plenty of good assets, and the proceeds of those sales will go toward repaying creditors. So LedgerX, I don't know if that's included in this round of bid procedures, but that's a good asset, we understand, that is going to be sold off. So the thing is, bankruptcies take so long because there's a lot of red tape, and you have to get a judge's sign-off for things that seem really small, just like, here's how we plan to go about soliciting people that may want to buy our assets. Is this okay? And then everybody else gets to weigh in and say, no, you need to reach out to a broader pool, or it's too fast, or it's too slow. So we're in that process right now.
And, in terms of that outreach that you're describing, BlockFi, another one of these crypto companies that ran into distress, put out its own presentation and had a hearing, in January, essentially saying, we try to get more than 100 people to, buy us effectively, and didn't quite succeed.
The funny thing about these processes is that the bankers that run the sales, they have to reach out to just as many people as possible. Oftentimes, we never end up learning who exactly was contacted, but it's really important for the court that the bankers and lawyers show we tried our best and cast the net as wide as possible, even if we thought this company has absolutely no interest in buying our assets. But it's worth a shot, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've got to justify those fees somehow.
Certainly do.
Just as a kind of a final question, the market continues to be challenging, as it were. And, we've seen just in January, multiple exchanges saying they're cutting 20, 30, in some cases, 40% of staff. We have different types of banks withdrawing from the crypto universe entirely. Other than the kind of the obvious headline numbers, are there any interesting underlying considerations that may affect any part of these bankruptcy proceedings related to just the state of the markets right now?
That's a good question. I mean, if the price of crypto goes up, it's good for crypto bankruptcies. Especially if judges find that the crypto held by the bankrupt company belongs to the company itself, as in the case of Celsius, then theoretically they can sell that crypto and start repaying creditors. So that would be a good thing. Interestingly, in the case of FTX, some early indications seem to say that the contract between users and the company was different than Celsius, that users retain title. So rather than being all general unsecured creditors that are like rooting for the price to go up so that they'll get more money back, we may see a situation where some people are made whole and some people are not, and the price of the crypto doesn't matter as much.
Exciting times. Lots to do.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you back to talk about it more. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
That was Bloomberg reporter Jeremy Hill. You can find more of his reporting on the Bloomberg terminal and on Bloomberg.com. And check out our twice-weekly newsletter, Bloomberg Crypto. This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicki Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producers are Mohammed Farouk and Sharon Beriro. Our associate producers are Ty Butler and Moses Andam. Desta Wondirad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.